Hi guys, so today I'm gonna speak with Professor Ulrika Olausson, and she's a professor in media and communication studies, and her research deals with the journalism and global environmental risks, climate change in particular. She also works as a senior researcher on several research projects and review for international journals such as Environmental Communication and Frontiers in Communication, Science and Environmental Communication, founding institutes and conferences. She has also several commissions outside academia where her research on media and climate change has attracted a lot of attention. So I'm very excited to share with you guys this conversation that I will have with her. And we are also going to discuss sustainability and in a communication sense, which is the sustainable communication. So I hope you enjoy it and see you later. I'm here with Ulrika Olausson. Did I say your name correctly? I hope so.
Good.
So, Ulrika, first of all, I would like to thank you again for this moment, this opportunity for us to have a conversation about sustainable communication. And also, I'd like to ask you to say hello to some Brazilians that may be watching, because this video will be part of my PhD dissertation and it will also be subtitled, so people can watch it and maybe extract something for their own researches.
Hello. Good to see you all. I hope you will enjoy our interview here, and hopefully we will get something out of the discussion.
I'm sure they will. So I will start by asking you why, in your opinion, is it so difficult to conceptualize sustainability in relation with communication?
I think I would like to ask you something first before I answer. Why do you have this assumption that it is so difficult?
I believe because what I've been reading is that it's difficult to conceptualize sustainability. So, since it is difficult to conceptualize sustainability, and it's like a very almost fluid concept, it is kind of difficult to adhere that, to put it along communication. I mean, there are approaches, but I don't know if there is a conceptualization of it. I don't know what that's my impression.
Yeah, but it is a fluid concept, and it is very, there's a lot of different definitions, and some people say that there is no consensus about sustainability except the fact that there is no consensus. So you're absolutely right. But don't you also think that it's difficult because it's difficult to conceptualize communication? And I think that's why it's overlooked. Communication is overlooked in most sustainability contexts. Communication is kind of, well, more or less taken for granted, and therefore, because it's taken for granted, it's invisible. It's just there, just like the air that we breathe, or the furniture in the room. So it's nothing material about communication. Of course, there is something, we know that it is highly material. Communication is connected to highly material things and circumstances. But from a layman's perspective, not the communication researchers, but from a layman's perspective, I think it's invisible communication. It's different with technological systems, for instance, which you actually can see and touch upon, or the economy, which you can make visible through statistics or other models. But communication, intangible, too mundane in a way. Even though, of course, people agree, everyone agree that information is necessary, marketing is necessary. So there's an explosion of communication officials. But as soon as times get harder in some way economically, then the communication people, they often have to leave first. So communication, well, it's good, but it is, you can cope without it as well. And I think personally it is problematic that communication is so invisible in Agenda 2030 and in the SDGs. The role of the media, journalism, transmedia, the impact of the digital media ecology overall. I mean, that's so important. It could both facilitate and obstruct sustainable development. So I agree that there is a problem with the relation between communication and sustainable development, and that's what we are trying to remedy here. And I think it is because communication is taken for granted. It is nothing concrete. It's just there. Everyone does it, communicate.
Yeah, I guess that's why maybe there are a lot of approaches that, in my opinion, are attempts to try to have this materialization of communication. There are people that approach communication through media, through platforms, specifically, you know, like I think they are all tries, you know, to understand it in a more concrete form. But I mean, we are in a horizontal perspective of living, so I think it's going to be even harder to attach communication to something else, because indeed it's everywhere.
And as soon, I mean, it's one thing to connect it to some kind of technological platform. Then we know what we're talking about. We're talking about this or that social media platform or whatever. But when it comes to the content that is actually distributed, then I have had so many, you know, problems with communicating that the content is important, that is the carrier of certain worldviews, values. It is reproducing structures, or it is transforming. I mean, all the potential of the content is kind of lost. But the platform, the technological platform itself, that is tangible, though. We can discuss that. So form and content is kind of, it's difficult. The form is easier than the content.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's aligned to what is my second question about. I mean, from the understanding that nature is a social construction, would it be possible to reach a point in which society, environmental, and economy can be discussed as a whole? How do you think this discussion could take place?
I think, to be blunt, I think we need more women in power, in positions where they really can speak, develop things, because women have a greater potential of thinking holistically. And that is not only me. There's research that actually proves this. Men are more prone to thinking components. Okay, here is the environment, here is the social, here is the, and to a certain extent this is necessary in order to, you know, really grasp things. But when it comes to holistic thinking, integral thinking, I think much more women in politics, in positions of power, that will lead to more holistic thinking. But kind of my own idea. Otherwise, I think that the very movement of post-modernity, the post-modern project, is kind of paving the way for this. Boundaries are dissolving, fragmentation is ongoing, and this will lead to new constellations and new combinations. We don't know. It could be the wrong ones. But if we try to influence this process of dissolving boundaries and fragmentation, then perhaps we could put these together in an easier way, both cognitively speaking and discursively. But I admit there's a danger with this as well, because I mean, postmodernity is also characterized by extreme relativization. But I think that we can influence this process, but we have to do it in a very, very, you know, strategic way. what we're doing.
Commented with you that I study space. So when we think about the geomedia approach or geographies of communication approach, or even human geography approach, which is very focused on how we relate to space and how space creates significance for us and vice versa. I've been thinking that if we understand better what surrounds us, not only materially speaking, but also symbolically speaking, we can reach that holistic view. Because these theories around space that I quoted, they are very focused on reaching this subjective spot that we have with space, but also to try to understand this space as this possible change of the future. Like, how do we work with space is connected to how do we work in society. So if we gentrify space, we'll gentrify society. If we devastate space, we'll devastate society. So it's like a connection to this idea. And I believe that if we understand better how we handle space, how we've been handling space, we'll be able to actually see how we'll be handling society and the important matters that we are in, you know?
Yeah.
So that's my idea.
I totally agree with you. And I think also that overall we work with our dualistic minds, and try to overcome dualisms at large, not only between humans and nature, but at large, because that is what kind of reproduces the entire sense of separation of everything, of between people, between humans and nature, between humans and God, or whatever. I mean, there is this fundamental line or fundamental idea of separation that permeates our thinking and our discourses. And I think that we have to first become aware of this, that this is structuring our entire worldviews and everything, and then try to work with it, work with dualisms. And that is also connected. I mean, space is one thing, but you interlink it now with society. So we have to bridge everything. And that is a long-term work, of course, but I think it's necessary to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why we need more women.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'm reading something like a text, an article, and I was like, it's all connected, you know, like I'm doing all this math, like connecting dots from different areas. And I was like, how people don't see it's all connected.
Exactly. And then we, as researchers, we have to fit into this strict model of, publishing articles where you can only treat one thing, you can only handle one thing at a time. It's so extremely frustrating sometimes to have to be forced to cut out a little piece of reality and talk about that piece. Yeah. And then perhaps in the discussion you can say, all right, this is interlinked with this and this and this and this, because we never get to the truth. And sometimes the truth is actually distorted by doing this. Yeah. All right.
No, it's really interesting to speak about that. I'm using Goffman in my PhD dissertation, and I was actually talking with a friend of mine that he's specialized in Goffman. So I was chatting with him and like to exchanging some ideas and to see if I wasn't like crazy out of my mind about doing the approximations that I am doing. And he was like, yeah, Goffman didn't write articles. He wasn't one of those researchers that would not write art. Why do you think that? And he was like, well, because his ideas were a full circuit idea. It wasn't like a specific thing that he could like take off and write an article about. And I was like, yeah, that's the thing, like writing a full circle thing.
Yeah,
I think we need
exactly.
more of that.
Exactly. And he wasn't active he was active in a different era of academy. I mean, now it's crazy. Now, before it was, books that was high status and what you were supposed to do. Now it's both books actually and scientific articles. But well, it's a crazy world, and it's measured in destructive ways. I think it isn't productive for science, but that's another question. But to be more concrete with this, how to integrate environment and the social and the economic aspects, then I just want to say that I'm very pleased with this cooperation with the Media Institute for You, which I mentioned, I think, at the seminar, around this concept and practice of sustainable journalism, because that means that this integral idea is implemented also in the education of journalists, because otherwise it's too late to try to talk to established journalists about this. Is very difficult around the world also. So I'm very pleased with that. And also we can think of a not you don't have to include all three levels or all three dimensions of sustainability in one report. If you're a journalist, it could be like environment and the social dimension, or the social dimension and the economic dimension. It could be like what interlinks or to interlink local and national consequences of, for instance, climate change with their economic and social ramifications on a global scale, for instance. So you don't have to do it all the way, but you have to start somewhere.
I think we can talk about levels or gradations or spectrums or things like that. Like I like those approaches that see not as black and white, but like in the middle.
When it comes to journalism, that it is, I think Peter mentioned it, that we can see, I mean, this already in different forms when climate change perhaps is not explicit, but included into other types of reporting. In some of my studies, I've seen that, for instance, in the US reporting, when they report on national security, which is often interlinked with refugee streams and such, then climate change is mentioned in that context. It's not the headline, or it's not the main topic, but climate change is kind of, so you have both social and environmental aspects without their knowing, actually. Because they integrate these naturally. So there are examples of this already in different contexts, not only news reporting, but that's my area. So that's why I think about it.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, more and more we are thinking in a more integrative way. At least I like to believe that. Like, we have news and we have information and we have contact with people all around the world. So I mean, I think it's one of the consequences of this mondialization, globalization. I don't like to use much the word globalization. I have some concerns about that.
What?
Okay, so my third question is this. You argue that people receive the information and consider it within their own experiences. How do you observe the relationship that occurs between producer and public in the construct of these personal experiences, consider matters about sustainability?
Well, I think that you have a point there, because in postmodernity, also this kind of boundary is kind of dissolving, the boundary between producer and user. So the phenomenon of producers, or in prod hyphen users, is indeed prevalent. And I particularly noticed this when I put together a research application recently about the recontextualization of far-right conspiracy theory in other discursive domains. I did this with Renira actually, just some weeks ago. And this, with conspiracy theories, it has to do with social sustainability. So it's sustainability relevant, this as well. So the survival of democratic systems. And I think that what is most, prevalent here is the fact that the producer of conspiracy theories, of this kind of propaganda, is invisible to many, extremely invisible, and as such, much more difficult to decloak and to disarm, to critically actually scrutinize than before. This is a result of the digitization of the media ecology. And targeted groups for this propaganda, they pick up on elements of these conspiracy theories or the conspiracy discourse that actually kind of resonate in one way or another with their previous experiences, their values. So they become part of their experiences, their personal lives in a different way than perhaps was intended, but very, very efficiently. And also, they don't really care, the receivers, the users here, they don't really care from where this information originates, who is the producer. It's not really that relevant. So I definitely think there's still agenda setters, more fragmented than before, perhaps, but also very powerful groups with certain agendas. And they are much more obscure today, much more difficult to expose. And perhaps also this tendency among certain publics, at least, that this is irrelevant. In this, neoliberal post-modern condition, it's everything is kind of relative to something else, and I, as an individual, I have the right to create my own truth. Where the ingredients of this truth come from, it's not really relevant because it feels good, so it must be true. And it at least it's my truth, and my truth is as good as anyone's. I don't know if that was an answer, but that was what came to my mind when you talked about this, who is guiding whom and who is the agenda setter.
That's actually fantastic. I mean, I agree with you. And, I believe that in this post-truth moment that we don't know anymore precisely what's true, what's not, who to listen to, who to believe, and what memories should we build our traditions or rituals or things like that. It's something that I've been like thinking, but it's not going to be in my PhD because I don't have space for that. And I had to focus. But I've been thinking a lot about that, on how our way to experience world is being very connected to this media life, which is this invisibility of the media in everywhere, and how we perceive those informations, and how we perceive those media contexts, and how we embedded them in our lives. It's how we construct our experiences nowadays, I believe.
Yeah.
When I worked as a guide, and most of my passengers had very, very affectuous memories of Disney, but they weren't like thinking about the content that they were embedded. Like, they weren't thinking that maybe those old Disney princesses were kind of contradictory for feminism today. Like, they weren't thinking about that. They just remembered that when they were kids, they watched the movies and they got like a costume of Cinderella, and they were very happy for that because it was their mother that gave them. So it like very intertwined, the media content with the things that they hold dear to their hearts that are related to family or friends or even communities. So
but don't you think this is also a question of identity? It feels like identity could have a place here, because at least in some theoretical strands of identity, it's more like, you know, you have several identities and you switch between these identity positions depending on which context you are in. So perhaps they are very aware of feminist, you know, symbols and things like that in other contexts.
but not in this particular.
No, because that's an entirely different identity. Now I'm going to have fun identity or something like that, or I'm going to relive my childhood or something like that. So I think it's also important to take that into consideration, that these things are contextually dependent.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, government has this facade idea, you know, this front idea that is like you have a lot of different facades that you wear it as you please according to the situation, and I believe that is the identity. Like you wear your identity according to the context that you are in. But what is really interesting that I think is like, even though when you are a feminist like myself, when I think about the problematics of the old movies, the old Disney movies, for example, I have this kind of, how do you say that, like a broken identity, because at the same time they are very connected to who I was when I was a kid, moments with my parents, moments with my brothers, and etc. And in the other side it's like, oh God, it's wrong. Like, please.
Yeah, but then it must be very, very important for Disney to actually intentionally and strategically appeal to the right identity positions with people. So perhaps that could be also an angle in your dissertation from a theoretical point of view, that because activating the wrong identity position in you, that would be devastating. So I very much, you know, appeals to the right identity positions, childhood memories, being with your family, things like that.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's very, very precise. I mean, I've been working with this methodology that's called scale, and it's from architecture, that says like you have different scales to actually have a full view of the same object. So that's what I'm doing in my dissertation. I'm using 3 different scales to approach the same object, you know. And one of the things that I've noticing, especially when I'm talking about those micro changes that I told you in the beginning, is that they leave this tiny little thing there that maybe not for everybody, but the person that checks this, that checks it, that sees that, he has an attachment with that. You know, like he's like, oh my God, I can't believe they put the Cinderella shoe right here. Oh my God, you know, like they do that. They do that in the park. So it's really interesting. Yeah. So last question, unfortunately, because I would like to chat with you like longer.
We can do it another time.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Have a virtual fika.
Yeah. I have it with quite a few people, so why not with you? It would be wonderful.
Okay, so deal. Okay, so from our research, we noticed a pattern that repeats formats consecutively in the creation of spaces such as theme parks, in a relationship of selling experience to maintain its relevance. In this regard, we also note that the construction of environments like these, like the theme parks, keeps transmedia user-producer relationship long-term, but at the same time, they are quite controversial in terms of sustainability per se. We are calling this process unsustainable transmedia. How do you believe that such an approach can be useful for sustainable communication studies?
Well, I think we talked about this already quite a lot, and I was a bit, hesitant when I didn't really know what these patterns were exactly and why they were unsustainable. But you talked a bit about it in the beginning. And I was I'm thrilled about this. Just keep on doing this. It will be a wonderful contribution. So I really don't have a more elaborate answer to this. I think it's definitely yes, do this, and because sustainable communication studies, they aren't established yet as a field. So this is an emergent field which we are kind of pushing. So this. What you're doing now is a wonderful contribution, which really could, contribute to defining the field. We can do sustainable communication studies in this way and then that way with journalism and so forth. So I think that just keep on doing what you're doing, and it will be a great contribution to this field, emerging field.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, it's really good to hear that, because I've been working a lot to have this approach that I believe it will be useful too. I'm trying to articulate ideas and methodologies that I believe it's going to be useful, not just for transmedia studies, not just for sustainability studies, but also for as a whole, like sustainable communication, which is something that I knew so little about, and now I'm feeling like a part of it. I am liking a lot. Yeah, I'm liking a lot the taxes, the classes. Our last seminar was really amazing. I wrote so many things down, like I want to write about all of them.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, but that's I'm really happy to hear that. And I think this concept of sustainable communication, sustainability, it is, as people say, well, it risks being watered down. There's too broad and too fluid, but we can also use it as an advantage that it is this broad, and perhaps use it to capture perhaps unforeseen issues and things that could be sustainability relevant, and I think that's what we're doing now, and right now it feels really productive. So I think we're on the right track.
Exactly. I agree with you. I'm very, very excited to see where it's going, and so excited also to be here in Sweden. So thank you also for making it possible, like for helping me and Renira to get here.
Yeah, it's our advantage, really.
Thank you so much. Do you want to add something, like comment or ask anything about the research, or make some comments about it? Be my guest.
No, I think I'm good. I think it was a rewarding conversation between us now. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much again, and I hope you have a great day, a great week, great year, and I hope we are all free of COVID.
Absolutely, and hope we meet soon again.
Yeah, and we will meet soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.